A rare red warning for extreme heat across parts of England and Wales is taking effect right now. It's only the second time the Met Office has issued such a severe warning, and it means there's a warning of potential risk to life, even for healthy people. Temperatures could exceed highs of 30 degrees Celsius in places, with 37 or even 38 degrees possible. And the spell of exceptionally hot and humid weather is forecast to continue for the next 2 days. Rail passengers in England and Wales are being advised to only travel if absolutely necessary today and Thursday. Well, with me is BBC weather presenter Chris Fawkes. And Chris, I just got hot there. Yeah. Just really explaining just how difficult things are today. So just tell us, what does the forecast look like today? Well,
it's not normal. This is an unprecedented heat wave for June. We're looking at temperatures smashing the previous record. Now, we take a look at our graphic. The previous record or current record as we speak right now is 35.6 degrees Celsius. But this afternoon, as you were saying a moment ago, I think we'll get to about 37, outside chance for 38. 37, by the way, would be the 7th highest temperature ever recorded in the UK. None of the top 10 temperatures recorded in the UK have ever been recorded in June, so that's pretty exceptional as well. Now, you're mentioning the red heat health warning is already enforced, the extreme heat warning. That is going to be coming in. There are the 10 hottest temperatures we've ever seen. So 37, as I say, 7th highest temperature we've ever seen if we get to that figure later on. The red warning is enforced for southern England, Midlands and southern areas of Wales as well. And it's with us for the next couple of days. The heat combining with humidity, that's making it feel very uncomfortable. But the kind of issues that we see, yes, there's hazards to health. Now, you might remember last month we had an extreme heat wave as well, where we smashed the previous May temperature record by over 2 Celsius. Now, during that heat wave, we know of at least 19 people that died through drowning. Now, over the last few weeks, I've been talking to the Royal Life Saving Society, and they've been telling me that when we get these extremely hot spells of weather, we see a big increase in the number of accidental drownings. They affect males most significantly. Over 80% of people that drown are men and boys, and they particularly affect teenagers and young men. So if you've got young people in your family, your friends, network, you need to tell them this. If they plan to go in the water, do it somewhere safe. So you can go to lakes that have lifeguards cover, or by the sea, again, that are patrolled by lifeguards. If you go into lakes and rivers that aren't patrolled, you can end up in cold water. If you jump into cold water, you can get something called cold water shock. That's where your breathing goes out of control, okay? And even good swimmers can struggle. If you find yourself in that situation over the next few days, when I know people will be heading to the water, it's really important to get on your back, try not to panic, and your breathing will slowly calm down. It might take a minute or two, but do that before you even start to think about moving or trying to get help. It's important to get your breathing under control on your back first. So that's one of the health implications we could see. One of the other issues is the infrastructure. We're talking about the risk of power cuts. Railway networks badly affected. Why? Well, because our railways have been built in previous decades when our climate was a lot cooler. And when we see these extremely hot spells, the railways expand in the heat. That can cause the rail lines to expand and buckle and break, and that can cause railways and trains to derail. So that's why we're seeing a number of services delayed or cancelled or running with reduced speed restrictions because of this extreme heat. And I guess people will be wondering how long this, high temperature will continue for in the UK and Europe. Yeah, well, Europe's interesting. I was looking at France. Yesterday, they had a temperature of 44.3 Celsius recorded in West France. I think that's the highest temperature we're going to get in this current heat wave. Yes, it's going to stay pretty hot over the next few days. In fact, today, highest temperatures I think will come in between 40 and 42 Celsius. And then towards the end of the week, we're looking at high 30s to low 40s before we see a more significant drop in temperatures into the weekend. But when we see that cooler air arrive in France, I think we're going to see a risk of some severe thunderstorms, bringing a threat of very large hail and some flash flooding as well. Here in the UK, well, it stays pretty hot. We'll still see temperatures into the 30s across eastern England, even on Saturday, before we see those temperatures really come down during the second half of the weekend.
Chris, thank you. That's our weather presenter, Chris Fawkes there. Well, let's speak to BBC climate reporter Mark Pointing. Mark, thank you for joining us on the programme. So, crucially, what are scientists saying about how much climate change is behind the extreme heat we're seeing at the moment?
Well, heat waves have always happened, but this is very much consistent with how the UK's climate is changing. Heat waves we've seen over the past few decades have become much more frequent and reaching hotter temperatures. As we've just been hearing, these temperatures for June would really be quite extraordinary, potentially breaking the record by maybe 2 or 3 degrees Celsius. And it's the margin of records that's kind of really concerning climate scientists. Temperatures getting hotter and getting hotter more quickly.
And how prepared would you say we are for these rising temperatures?
Well, I think you only need to take a look around the UK today to see that the UK really isn't very well prepared for these kinds of temperatures. As we've just been hearing, the impacts on railways, hundreds of schools being closed, and the government's independent climate advisors have warned that this problem is only likely to get worse. The UK, it says, is built for a climate that essentially no longer exists. And if we look into the future, these temperatures might feel extraordinary today, but they're likely to get much hotter in the decades ahead, potentially, the Met Office says, reaching the mid-40s in a heat wave by the middle of the century, so only a few decades' time.
And all this happening during the London Climate Action Week, a serious warning, I guess, for activists and the public.
Yeah, sadly, it's consistent with what climate scientists have been warning for a number of years, many decades, and this is now kind of starting to play out. And as you say, happening during London Climate Action Week, there's kind of a sense of irony, but scientists are really saying that this should be a wake-up call, that the UK needs to get much better prepared, but also the planet, countries around the world need to take much stronger measures to tackle climate change if we're going to stop these heat waves becoming really much hotter in the future.
Mark Ponting, thank you for that. Well, let's speak to Spencer Ellis, Managing Director at Kent Building and Construction, who's continuing to work through the extreme heat in Kent, while some of his workers have chosen to stop. Thank you for joining us on BBC News. First of all, did your work yesterday? It was hot then. What was it like?
Back down in Kent, it wasn't so bad. We had quite a few thunderstorms yesterday, so the morning was manageable, but the afternoon did warm up, and it got rather uncomfortable.
So some of your workers are choosing not to work today. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's fine. You know, I've always said to the guys that you know, I always give them the choice whether they want to come in and work. So, you know, it was their decision. You know, productivity drops a lot in this sort of heat, and it's really uncomfortable when it gets up above, you know, in mid-30s. So, you know, as a company, I'm fine with it. You know, I leave it up to them.
Yes, and so on days like this, what provisions do you put in place for yourself, for your workers? What kind of advice do you give them?
If they wanted to come in and to work for the day, I tried to sort of structure the day's work where I give them the option of starting earlier when it's a little cooler, finishing earlier. Maybe sort of plan my day where they can work, do any outside work again in the early part of the day, and when it starts to get hotter, sort of move inside into sort of shadier areas. If we are working outside, to sort of work on the opposite side of the house to where the sun is, so that we're always in the shade, and just make sure that they have you know, sun cream, plenty of water, access to plenty of water and fluids, and you know, and just sort of tell them just to take it a little bit easier when it's this hot.
Spencer Ellis, Managing Director at Kent Building and Construction. Thank you for joining us. Well, let's now speak to our reporter Pierre-Antoine Denis, who is live in Vence in southern France for us. So yesterday was the hottest day ever in France. Just talk to us about the impact there.
Yeah, it had a huge impact there, simply because we've seen also the ripple effect that it had onto the night, with temperatures not going under 30 degrees Celsius for many, many parts of France, including densely populated areas such as Bordeaux or Paris. Here, where I am in the south of France, in Vence, we're in the orange weather warning, so no direct threat to life, but still the temperature is still very, very hot. And I've seen many people trying to cool themselves off a little bit in that fountain behind me, but there has been a huge impact with a 50% increase in calls to the equivalent of 911 here in France. This was a normal messaging from the authorities saying, do not rush to A&E, call us and we'll tell you what to do. We've seen an emergency plan put in place by the Prime Minister to try and bolster the health care system here in France ahead of potential new heat waves across the summer. We've seen also in Western France, one of the worst affected areas in the country, 60,000 homes are without electricity this morning as a result of a power plant there that have failed this morning. So that goes to show it has already a direct impact on many people across the country, simply because you may have a fan or an AC, but if you don't have electricity, you can't simply power it. So there are real direct concerns here for the people across France, as 90% of the country is impacted one way or another by this heat wave.
And we've been hearing scientists saying that Europe is warming faster than any other part of the world. What are people saying about that there in France, and the authorities as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has for instance, a direct impact here. The Mediterranean Sea is the body of water that is rising 20% faster than the global rise in temperature, in average global rise in temperature across the world. So for people here that were bathing in the Mediterranean Sea yesterday, they were saying, oh, that's a lot warmer than the usual for this time of year. And it has direct impact on the corals, on the ecosystem, the marine ecosystem in the south of France. But for people here, when we're hearing reports of how these heat waves might be 5 times more likely now than they were at the turn of the century, people I've been speaking to are telling me, look, this is orange warning here now. I don't want to be here when it's red. And some of my friends that I've been speaking to in the capital have been telling me how I'm going to be able to live here in the next 5 years if this is how it's going to be, if I'm in an apartment where temperatures above 40 degrees during the day and 30 at night. Then there is a real concern among the healthcare system, the care homes, that are really worried that we are not ready here in France. And there is the ghost of 2003 that is right there, when the messaging wasn't there and 15,000 lives were claimed as a result of a 19 days long heat wave that had a real devastating impact here in France. And that was in August. So let's see, everyone's afraid of what could come up this summer.
Pierre-Antoine Denis, thank you so much for that. So, a reminder of the breaking news here in the UK. A rare red warning for extreme heat across parts of England and Wales has now come into effect. It's only the second time the Met Office has issued such a severe warning, and it means there's a warning of a potential risk to life, even for healthy people. We're already hearing reports of disruption to the rail network today. Well, let's speak to the BBC's Nick Johnson, who's live in Reading for us. So, Nick, we're hearing about those disruptions. What are people telling you there in Reading?
Well, many of the passengers that I've spoken to this morning say that they are heeding the advice from rail companies, including Great Western Railway, which runs services here, to only travel if it's absolutely essential. Those people have told me that their journeys are essential. You know, one lady said she had face-to-face meetings, that she couldn't move around. Someone else said that they've got to get the train to their final driving test before their driving lesson tomorrow. But those people also say that they are aiming to travel at the cooler parts of the day. But it's certainly a lot quieter here than it usually would be. I've spoken to Nibsy, who runs that coffee van just there. She says the queue for her van at this time would usually be snaking its way around behind me. But as you can see, there's no one there at the moment. So there are fewer people here than normal. But yeah, the advice from the rail companies, only travel if absolutely necessary. That's partly because for the health and safety of passengers on board and going about their journeys, but also the infrastructure here, the rail infrastructure in the UK wasn't built to deal with this prolonged period of hot weather. It's not like just a day or two when it's been exceptionally hot. We're talking about days on end here. And there's a risk that the track could buckle under such conditions. And also the points, a risk of points failure, the points, those bits of moving track that direct trains down different tracks, they're also more vulnerable to failures at times like this. So it's for that reason that the rail companies, through this red health alert zone, say that they are running fewer services, and the services that do run are likely to run a little bit slower. They've also said that in the hotter parts of the day, they've warned passengers that are travelling that there may be some short notice delays and ultimately cancellations.
And we are also hearing of some schools closing or closing early. Just remind us what authorities are doing in parts of the country.
Yeah, well, there's no official government guidelines on a maximum temperature that schools can stay open at. It's sort of a school-by-school decision. Yesterday, I think there were over 300 schools across England and Wales that had closed or partially closed. So that's school-by-school decision-making process. Schools have decided in some instances to let pupils come in PE kits rather than school uniform, and to close entirely. But it is a challenge, as I say. It's not just one day over a period of days to make sure everyone in school and in care homes and elsewhere remains safe and comfortable.
Nick, thank you. That's the BBC's Nick Johnson there. And just to let you know that we do have a live page on the latest updates on the heat wave, which you can find on the BBC News website. You can find out much more there about the school closures that are taking place, the disruption that we're hearing on the railways as well, and also crucial advice about how you can stay safe during this extreme heat.